So my thread is coming up out of the pelham about 1/8 of an inch from the tip. I'm going to pick up 2 seed beads. I'm going to move these over here so I don't have to reach as far. I'm going to go around behind, and that same 1/8 of an inch, I'm going to come back up through both layers. So I've come up from the back. So basically my thread is making a circle from the front to the back, and there's 2 beads on my needle. And when I pull them tight, they're going to sit across the gap between the suede and the pelham. And then I'm going to take my needle through the second bead I added, and I want to go, there's 2 sides to that bead. You want to go the side that faces the first bead. So you want to go between the 2 beads and then out facing the direction that you're headed. And we'll fix, that's going to set that bead where we need it to go. And we'll fix the first bead, which is now all funky, when we come back around. This time, and every other time, we're only going to pick up 1. I'm going to turn here and I'm going to look, and I'm going to go the same distance from the back. Oops. Into the front and pull, and I'm going to put my thread back up through the bead. My thread just hooked around the other 2 beads. Watch what your thread does. And that's going to set it where it needs to go. Pick up a bead, back to front, making sure that you grab at least an edge of that front pelham, and then back through the bead so that your thread and needle come out the direction that you're heading. You're always moving over about a bead's width apart. Your stitches should be about a bead's width apart. You won't see them very much, but you want them to be kind of evenly spaced and the same distance from the edge on the back. As close as possible. No one's perfect, but this is going to be visible. Now it will be the back of your piece, but you'll find people like to look at that for some reason. So you have to be much more cautious here about having a neat stitches than at any other time during the process. Pick up a bead, back to front, and through the bead in the direction that you're heading. If you go through your bead, if you find your bead, instead of laying the beads here are laying on their side and the hole of the bead is facing the next bead. So if I wanted to, I can run my thread and my needle through all of the beads at once, right? And sometimes I do. That'll straighten them out if they get a little wonky. So they're sitting on their side in such a way that you could run your needle through. If you find that they're sitting on their, not on their side, but on their back with the holes pointing out instead of towards each other, then what you've done, that happens if you go through the bead the wrong direction. So if I went backwards through this bead and I go from back to front, then when it sits, it's going to sit with the hole facing up instead of laying on its side. And that is not a bad thing. Sometimes that's a style choice, and you can do the whole thing that way if that's your preference. You don't want to go back and forth between the two necessarily unless you have a design reason for doing so. It's not going to look very neat that way. There are times when one or the other is preferable. I tend to like the look of them. Lying on their side is generally my preference. Sometimes if I'm adding fringe, I may decide that I want the bead hole facing straight out so that the fringe will drop straight down. But you'll see we're going to do fringe on this one and we're not going to do it that way. But it's a tool for your tool bag. Don't worry about this one going across. That first one gets fixed with the last one. Okay. Keep on moving.